Welcome to Arcade Attack. A retro gaming podcast for up to 4 players.
Sonic Boom!
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. It's another Arcade Attack podcast. And this time, very sadly for the viewers as well as listeners, you can actually see all of our beautiful mugs on your phones and PCs, which I know, we have to deal with the burden of being so dashing, but there we go. Don't stop laughing. Anyway, back to reality. Yeah. So we've got a couple of the usual ragtag mob with me tonight. So we got Adrian.
I'm here. I'm
big thumbs
sitting
up.
on furniture. I'm part of the furniture.
In what looks like the biggest room in the whole world because your camera's like a wide-angle lens.
It is, isn't it?
And sitting in what can only be described as some kind of 2000s found footage horror film is Dylan.
Hello, mate.
We don't honestly know whether something's going to appear.
If something does, it's going to scare the bejesus out of everyone.
I'm telling you now, it's like a bit of dust will catch the light and you'll be like screaming blue abdabs, yeah.
And then my camera will just go like, he's gone.
And then you'll be on the floor standing in the corner.
Like it's like the Croydon Witch Project.
The Blair Croydon Project. So, I've also got a very special guest with me tonight because you're thinking, who is this hanger-on? Who is this imposter?
Who's this hanger-on? Who's this doppelganger?
Who is this guy that's just tagging along?
That isn't Rob. That is Keith. It's not Dean. Who is it?
It's not Dean. It's not Dean. But to be fair, we've mentioned his name, or I certainly have on plenty of pods, and he's listened to pretty much all of them, I think. And I've shared, more than a few beers, shall we say? More than a few beers over the years. And it's Steve.
Yeah.
Good evening, Steve. Good afternoon. Well, who knows? We got people listening in. What is it? Nicaragua. We got Thailand. We got South Africa. We've got Brazil. It's brilliant, isn't it? The amount of places we get heard in. I still don't quite believe it, but there we go. So I've known Steve for probably I was thinking 20 years, and then I went, no, it's closer to 30 years, and I was like, here's that bit where you feel really old again, kind of. Situation.
Your maths is terrible. 20 years.
No, well,
I've known Steve like 20 years.
Listen, but Dale, let's be honest. 1990 was still 10 years ago, right?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
The way we talk about things.
That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. So shush. But on a serious note, we've shared a heck of a lot of gaming interests over the years, and we've had sort of a lot of titles that we played the same, a lot of consoles we played the same. However, the way we kind of got into gaming was totally different, wasn't it? Like literally night and day. So, I'll let Steve kind of introduce himself, but more importantly, a little bit about like how he's got here, why he enjoys gaming, and kind of where it all started, really. So, do you want to kind of regale us with your?
Take it away. Well, thanks very much. Lovely to be here. Long time listener, first time caller. So you saying about, and Dylan as well, saying about feeling old, talking about gaming. When I was thinking about this and my introduction to gaming, this story involves cassettes. So old. So my gaming history would have been, I think it was mid to late 80s when my dad inherited a VIC-20.
Yes.
Oh, God. Yeah.
My predominant memory from that, there's one or two games I can remember, but the main memory I have from that is loading times. All I remember is loading times.
Yes. Just like the 464.
Yeah. Why is it not loaded? Why can't I find the cassette again? So yeah.
Change the volume.
And then, so following the VIC-20, I continued on the Commodore theme, went VIC-20, Amiga 500 plus, in fact.
Amazing.
Big budget.
Adrian loves you even more now.
Exactly.
And then it must have been, I think it was around the late 80s, early 90s, then I inherited an old, it was a 286 PC, which was, at the time, it was old. It was terrible. James already backed me up on this.
It had cobwebs in it when it was new.
So
Steve, you're a PC gamer before a PC game was a thing, really.
PC game, I would say, yes. Yeah.
What sort of games? Like the old Duke Nukem, I assume, those sort of old games, or
no, this was
older?
before that. It was before that. It was a terrible, terrible games machine. Looking back at it, it was awful. But
it was awfully brilliant.
Exactly. Yeah. All I remember is fiddling with it, trying to get games to run. They would eventually run badly, but they would run nonetheless. And so it was then following that, I then made the transition, I'm afraid to say, Adrian, to console. I've been console, and I'm sorry.
Oh no! Yay!
I do know you like your Sega consoles. That's right, isn't it, Steve?
That's right. Yeah. So I started off handheld. Started off with the Game Gear. So that would have been must have been early 90s. And I had the Game Gear for a lot of years, basically through the 8 and the 16-bit era.
Yeah, man.
And then I regret it now. One of these things that you look back on in hindsight, always 2020, isn't it? Yeah. I sold the Game Gear and what at the time was quite a big pile of games to cash converters to fund the PS1.
No, but Steve, we used to hang out, and I remember going to your house once, and you had loads of Game Gear games. You had a massive collection.
Yeah. I had that for quite a lot of years, so like all the way through the 16-bit era, and then you obviously jumped from the Game Gear to the PS1, which at the time was mind-blowing.
That was a good decision, I think. Love the thing.
Yeah, but Game Gears are cool.
I think you could probably say, "Oh, why did I sell the Mega Drive?" But the Game Gear, but you went to PS1, so.
Yeah, I suppose a lot of these things at the time, it was, that's old now, I've got to have the latest, newest thing. And
that's what everybody did, though, wasn't it? Yeah. Everyone was like, oh, you leave it hanging around, it's gathering dust, we'll get rid of it, or we'll just sell it, And obviously, little did they know, I mean, not everything goes up in price just because it's old, but let's be honest, if you've got decent condition gaming machines now, I mean, the price is just going up and up and up. The amount of times we've mentioned this on pods is crazy, but I mean, the price is just like are becoming silly now. But good old hindsight, eh? Crikey. So what was it? So VIC 20,
Amiga 500,
500 plus,
Krusty PC,
286,
Krusty PC,
Game Gear, and then I started down the PlayStation line basically. Followed the PS1 with a PS2. Shortly thereafter, I took a step backwards because I was offered a SNES and a pile of games.
See, I never knew that.
This was around 2004, and I still felt like I had that itch to scratch because everyone else, remember at the time, had 16-bit consoles.
Yeah.
And all my 16-bit gaming was done around at friends' houses. So I thought I've got to scratch that itch. 20 quid for a SNES, which looking back
20 quid?
20 with a pile of games. Looking back at it now was a bargain. And it's still going as well.
You've still got it?
Still got it. And then, from that point onwards, it was then continuing down the PlayStation line. So 3, 4, yet to get a PS5.
I'll take things you didn't know for 1,000. Okay, I genuinely didn't know that. But, so you still got it?
Still got it.
Is it yellow?
No, it's been cleaned up. So it's, yeah.
And then the sandwich toaster route, yeah?
Yeah, the sandwich toaster route. Yet to go PS5. I should actually add in there, Adrian, to make you feel a little bit better, I still have got a PC for gaming, purely for RTS games, because as you mentioned in the previous pod, RTS games on consoles are pretty thin on the ground.
I think that's putting it mildly.
Steve, what's the best RTS game then, really quickly?
Red Alert, or Total Annihilation, or Dawn of War. I'm torn on 3.
Oh, I knew we'd do this. We're going to end up talking about another genre of gaming and stuff like that.
It's an RTS tangent.
Red Alert, Total Annihilation. There's not anywhere near enough love for that game out there. But anyway. Right. Well done.
Yes, Steve, nice.
Gaming history complete.
But
yes.
I mean, go on.
What
were you going to say, Dale? Are you going to
I was just going to say, yes, well done, Steve. That's basically what
we all went to the same high school as well, so make it really clear. So we never hire people outside of a high school, do we? So
no, they have to have gone to school with us, and then you can jump on the podcast. Yeah. Adrian, why have you got 65 million as your little headline thing?
Because that's the answer to a question linked to the podcast today. So I thought
that's an answer to the question.
I'll tease people. So if you can work out what the question is, that's the answer, and it obviously ties into the topic we're going to discuss very soon. So it's a little game I thought I'd put out there,
and it's as if you knew what was coming. That's a beautiful segue into
we went on it.
Dylan. You've set him up, and he's teed off beautifully. So
that's what we do.
You guys seem to do this every time, and I don't know how you do it. It's consummate professional, maybe. I don't know. So we're all acquainted with our guest, and we're going to move on to today's pod. So what are we going to talk about? So, what could we possibly have in store that we haven't covered before. Ooh. Maybe we've borrowed some ideas from somewhere else. or could perhaps rewind into a certain era.
Oh, dear.
You always have to rewind before you return your tapes.
Be kind.
Be kind. I feel like I've taken a leaf out of the Adrian's bad dad joke book there, but hey, it's all good. But for those of you in the dark as much as the rest of the guys, after those jokes, we're going to talk about the amazing nostalgia-fueled memories of the good old rental shops of old. Mm-hmm. Rental shops, games, mostly films as well. I mean, just talking about it there just gives you flashbacks, doesn't it? Amazing period of time. And I know you guys are going to go into some stories and have a proper trip down memory lane, but I'm gonna share with you a very early memory, if I may, of this. Firstly, mainly because I'm the host and I get dibs. Yep. But more importantly, so Adrian doesn't have a chance to hijack my opener, which he normally always does.
He's got a story. I can see him now. He's like, James, I want to.
I know he's got a story, but he can it for the moment.
And what a story it is!
I bet it is. I bet it's amazing. All your stories are amazing. Come on, even if you do hijack me. But my earliest memory, and this is probably going to differ across all of you guys, is I remember, and this was before your Blockbuster and things like that, there was a lot of news agents around, okay? Loads of news agents. You used to get penny sweets and you used to get your little bags of sweets and your sherbet dippers and your white mice and all this sort of stuff. And they throw it on the counter and can it back in and all this sort of thing. And you had your magazines and your drinks. And I remember one particular news agent I used to go up to with my dad. And we used to pop in and get a little bag of sweets and whatever. And they started renting Mega Drive cartridges, right? And to be fair, they had this little pokey display. It was a little sort of like, metal racking. Wasn't much. It was probably about, 16, 17 games on there or something. But when I saw it, I was like, and when I was told like what you could do, this guy was like, oh yeah, you pay a deposit and then you can rent the game for like a couple of quid or whatever. I was literally, my mind was absolutely blown. My sort of like, whatever it was, 11, 12, 13-year-old mind. I was like, so I can take it home and actually use the game. And he's like, yeah. And it obviously had like a rubber band around it and you had the box and like a little card or something like that. But it wasn't cheap either because it was, although it was only a couple of quid to like rent the game, it was like 20 quid for a deposit. I think it was something like that. And then they actually started doing, this little news agent started doing consoles as well. Again, it was a Mega Drive, I think. And they were like, yeah, you got to pay a £50 deposit.
You get that money back. Yeah.
No, I know. But like at the time when you're young, you sort of think like you don't.
Where the hell's 50 quid? Yeah.
Yeah. It just doesn't register. And like, I mean, I think eventually we rented a couple of games, but, when we eventually got the Mega Drive, and they had VHS tapes as well, of course. And I just remember that as my earliest memory walking into a newsagent, never having seen any kind of rental business or whatever before and thinking in my young mind, I can actually take a game away for like £3, which I couldn't quite believe because obviously games have always been expensive. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure we talked about this recently as well, about how expensive games have always been. Don't get me started on the modern ones, but yeah, to be able to take something away for just a few quid and actually play it was the whole, that was the whole sort of bedrock of that whole rental journey. And it was amazing. I thought it was brilliant, and it sort of hooked me in, and I carried on from there really. And I'm sure we'll no doubt talk about some other cracking little stories later on. But like, let me throw it open, Adrian. I know you're itching. You got your finger on your chin and your lips quivering. And hit me. What you got? Come on.
I've got three stories. I guess
hit me.
One's happy, one's sad, and one's just a bit bonkers. So. I
wouldn't expect anything less.
Maybe I'll start with the bonkers one because it's the earliest memory. But I used to go to primary school, not with you guys. I don't think any of you went to the same primary school as me. And I was friends with a girl called Tamsin, but she did go to Riddlesdown. I don't know if you remember Tamsin.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
We kind of lost. We kind of weren't really friends at Riddlesdown, but my mum got to know her mum quite well during when we were friends at primary. And her mum used to run a framing/mirror shop in kind of Sarnsted area with little off street in Sarnsted, nice area. And then she started going, I'm going to start renting VHSs. So you could buy frames or mirrors, or you could rent out videos.
Yeah, those two things really go together, don't they?
It's bizarre, isn't it? And I remember because I was friends with Tamsin and I had connections, and my mum knew Tamsin's mum. we saw all these VHSs, all these new releases, and this was we had like first dibs. We had like mates rates. Really, I think she chucks in a few videos now and then, not to keep, just to rent. And I think my mum wanted to support like a local business as well. And we used to get hold of Problem Child. We used to rent out Problem Child 2, quite often.
Child. God, yeah.
Saw all the classics, I tell you. So that was an interesting one. So if you wanted a frame or a mirror or a VHS rental, Sanderstead.
Is that the answer to? Is that the question for the answer? How many times you rented Problem Child?
I do like.
You should have just bought it, mate. It would have been cheaper.
Yeah, it's not big or clever, but I think it's quite a nice. Well, it's a funny film, isn't it? It's stupid.
Films, frames, and mirrors.
Yeah. But that's my crazy story. But I think Dylan's got a story. I'll come round and hijack.
Are we going round the room?
Oh, it's a round table. Round we go.
Well, it's a sad story, guys. It's a sad story.
A sadder story.
When I first got a Master System, we weren't that well off, and sort of I was left with Ghostbusters as my only game for months.
We've not heard that story before.
Before I realised that Hang On and Safari Hunt were on the console, I was like, woohoo! And Snail Maze. So those were some good times. And then for months and months, you'd have to wait until like Christmas or birthdays or something to get anything new. But it was my dad's idea. He's just like, there's a Blockbuster opened up in Croydon. This was basically when the one in Suffolk, is it Suffolk House? Suffolk House, the one in sort of on the little kind of junction thing opened up. And he was like, and you can rent video games in there. And I was like, what? Because I was like, oh, give me a game and stuff. But like Master System games, the good ones, were £30 in those days, which is like £300 in today's money, which is just like ridiculous, isn't it? So he's just like, just pay a couple of quid and then you can have it. I think you had it for one night, didn't you? It was quite weird the way Blockbuster worked. You kind of, if you rented something after like 11 o'clock on the Saturday, then you didn't have to give it back until like 11 p.m. on the Sunday. Right. So you basically just had like all of Saturday and then all of Sunday to play games, and it was brilliant. Like I got like a new game every week. I had to, because you had to give it back on Sunday. There are a couple of games I rented more than once, but Blockbuster was a bit of a lifeline. The video games for me video games kind of brought me up. So I kind of like needed that, something to do. And it's, at the weekends and stuff. So
it's
a good time. It was just a good thing. It was just a good thing that was around.
It's interesting that you said the same thing that I was thinking when I thought back as well about that you could take it away for a couple of quid because
But see, it was different, wasn't it? So with Blockbuster, they had my dad's bank account details. So I guess if you broke the cartridge or broke the tape, obviously we rented like movies and stuff from there as well, then they'd have some way of getting that back from you straight away. Whereas obviously your newsagent guys just like, well, this is our fail safe. This is our, you ruined the cartridge. We're keeping that £20.
Well, they had to have something, I suppose, didn't they? Because, Blockbuster, which we may or may not talk about a bit later on. Let's be honest, they had a few more quid in the bank and a bit of a bigger infrastructure than old poker news agents up Hamsey Green. So but the thing remains though is the fact that a couple of quid and the game's yours for 24, 48 hours or whatever. Which and let's face it, when we rented games, we played every waking moment to try and get the most out of it.
Those weekends, I had a Blockbuster game. Like, my parents did not care. They're just like, they accepted it. They're like, look, I've only got this until Sunday night. And I'd leave it until I'd jump on a bus with Dad at like 10 p.m. on the Sunday to drop it off because you just want to like max it out. And I was like,
yeah.
Like, you don't want to get a fine.
No, not a late fee.
There was one time One time we were really close. One of my cousins was around, and he basically was like talking to my dad constantly. And it was only Joe Montana football, and I was like, "Oh man, we have to give this back!" Like, and my dad's going to get a massive fine or like something worse. I'm like, "We got to go." So I'm like, being the kind of trying to interrupt their conversation. Like, come on, adults, we need to go. We need to get on the bus.
Oh God. Well, I'm interested to hear. I want to, because I'm saving a little golden nugget because Steve's got a hell of a couple of stories, mainly because of a certain place you used to work at. But I want to hear, Adrian. I want to hear we've had your bonkers one. What was your sad one?
Well, it's Blockbuster. So, and I don't think any of you guys are with me, but I was definitely with Darren. I think with Kev, and we must have been maybe the crew. You guys might have been there, but we went to Blockbuster in Purley. And we were looking around, and at the time, Darren had a massive VHS collection. Shout out to Dazza. I think he probably still does.
He really did, didn't he? Yeah, he had loads of videos.
And we walked into Blockbuster once, just as a, the cool crew from Riddlesdown, looking around latest videos and games. And I remember we just having a look around, we didn't see anything. So we were walking out the store, and then I think the manager stopped us and said, "Oi, wait!" And they stopped us at the door, and they searched Darren's bag. And he had loads of VHSs in there.
Hang on, I think I remember this.
Yes, yeah.
Were you there, Steve?
I was. Yeah, I remember this. Yeah.
Yeah. So the manager was really rude. Said and they basically accused us of stealing, even though they were clearly not Blockbuster videos. I think we had to hang in the store for about half an hour. And we were quite young and naive, and it was quite scary. And at the end of it, they're like, "Oh, we're going to check the securities, and we're going to check this. You might call the police." I'm like, "What the?" And half an hour later, the manager begrudgingly, in a very grumpy way, let us go, but he wasn't apologetic. And they basically accused us of shoplifting. And so it did tarnish my kind of views of that particular Blockbuster for a few months at least.
Do you know the funny thing about that story?
Yeah.
Was that it happened to me.
Did it?
And I was there. Basically, what happened so that obviously the sands of time blur the memories. I remember this. So Darren lent me Speed 2, I think he was, which he bought as an ex-rental from that shop. Obviously, they hadn't taken the security tag of it. So we'd gone in, had a look around the stuff. I'd had the Speed 2 or whatever it was on my person. Set the thing off, obviously, as we're leaving the store.
Maybe that's what happened as well.
That was it. And basically, that exact thing happened. But it was me, mate. I was there with you, and it was basically, Was it you? Was it me? I can't exactly remember who was there. Yeah, it was Darren's ex-rental, the Senate. Oh, I forgot. You just reminded me. I just completely forgot about that. And like,
so
we were just basically just standing. We're basically just standing there. We're standing there, like, waiting for them to watch the security test. I'm like, yeah, literally, just walked around the store. And then went out. No, I haven't tea-leafed that. No, that was on my person. And I was like, Darren, how did you give me this?
Was Darren even with us then? I just knew it was to do with Darren.
I don't know if he was with us, actually. It must have been me, and I can't remember who it was. You said you and Kev. That
Kev, maybe, I don't know. But Stevie, I can't remember James and Stevie.
I was sure there was an incident where someone got detained in Blockbusters. And you said about it being Darren, because Darren had a massive collection of VHS, huge collection.
It was me.
But it was you. Sorry.
But basically, I was just being pissed off. I was just like standing there going like.
And they weren't apologetic, were they? They just went, get out of here. Kind of
they were just like, no, we can't see that you've stolen it. Bye. Well, because I didn't steal it.
So because of an ex-rental copy of Speed.
My mate bought it, because, oh, dearie me, ex-rental.
That you borrowed off Darren.
Nothing but trouble, these ex-rentals. Thanks, Darren.
Hang on, he's not here to defend himself, so that's
but he's listening. I know he's listening.
Darren, give us a soundbite on if Dylan got you in trouble when you were whose fault was it? We need to know.
Also, why would you buy Speed 2? Speed 2 is not a good film. Speed, yes, we'll allow that.
I think it was Speed 2. Out of that whole conversation.
I really think it was Speed 2, so it totally wasn't worth it.
Is that Jason Patrick? Who's in Speed 2? Is it?
Right, Jason Patrick.
It is, yeah.
Sandra Bullock
silence falls over the whole podcast.
Apparently, Keanu Reeves was offered to be in Speed 2, but he declined. He said, no, don't want to do it. So they basically had to sort of rewrite Jason Patrick into it.
Keanu's such a dude. Yeah, Keanu's such a dude, man. I just totally back every decision he makes.
Well, on that note, then, chaps, before we go on to something else, what were we've talked about kind of a few little stories about the situations and things in the rental shops and the whole basis of it. But are there any big titles that you remember renting more than once?
The big one for me was Wimbledon on the Master System. I bloody love that game.
Oh, that was a good game.
It is a good game. It is
it's a good game.
It's still one of my favorite tennis sims. It's
that's
fast as hell. it's fast as hell, but I used to be amazing at that game. I used to I started from scratch and I did all the tournaments and built up the player and just like, I was so good, but I had to keep on, like, I was like, I've only done like 2 of the Grand Slams and then I have to give it back. So I was like, I just rent it again next weekend. Like,
is the 65 million the answer?
That's
to the
it.
How many
That's
times?
It. That's it.
How many aces Dylan gets an average match of Wimbledon?
And that's probably my total earnings of my Wimbledon player.
Nice.
65 million.
Yeah.
Nice.
Better than Sampras, mate. Better than Sampras. That was definite. That was one of them, but I'll say another one.
That is a great game, though. I'll concur on that one. Yeah, Wimbledon's a classic. Age, what you got?
I didn't really rent a lot of games from Blockbuster, but I remember actually building up my PS1 collection quite substantially. You can buy games from Blockbuster obviously as well. And I remember because I got my PS1 quite late, didn't get my PS2 straight away, so they were trying. Some of the old PS1 games they're selling really cheap towards the end. And I think I've shared this story before. Apologies if I shared it. I can't remember what pod it was on, but I remember I was in the Croydon Blockbuster, and they only had the discs of these PS1 games, about 4 or 5, and they're like £2 each. And I was like, what are these? And then I was like. And I picked them all of them. I said, well, the cheap as chips. There's no cover. But one of them was Samurai Shodown, or I always thought it was Samurai Showdown, but it's not, is it? But I remember going to the till and going, look at this. These are cool PS1 games. I've always wanted to play Samurai Shodown. And I remember buying it, and I could see them sniggering at me, the people at the till going, I can't believe he's bought it. He's actually buying them.
Someone's actually bought it for £2.
They were laughing at me when I was walking out of the store, but the joke's on them because Samurai Shodown is quite a rare game on the PS1. But the joke's back on me.
That's the disc.
I don't own it anymore. It's disappeared. But I just remember you shouldn't be rude to customers. I think they were. I bet in the background, like, do we just throw these away?
I wouldn't say the staff in Croydon Blockbusters were much cop, really.
They're a bit grumpy.
They were like sarky teenagers, weren't they? I'm just like, mate, come on.
I fell right into their trap, didn't I?
This next bit's going to be.
I'm like also a sarky teenager. Yeah, because didn't Steve work at Blockbuster?
Well, no, we don't talk to ex-employees.
Well, I feel like one of you two. I feel like one of you two did.
I was in there so much I probably should have, but I didn't. Yeah. No. But yeah, that's what I was gonna. I was gonna go over to Steve and say what was. There's a few kind of joint games that we used to rent. For God's sake, we'll do that first, shall we? Because obviously we're on that subject. But there's several. I did a few sort of Mega Drive cartridges and things like that, but it wasn't until like the PS1 days really that's when it kind of like really kicked off. And we used to go to not just Blockbuster. We used to go to, what was it in Purley? Extravision. Anyone remember Extravision?
Yeah.
I remember Apollo in
I remember Extravision, yeah.
And it was either there or Blockbuster. But one of the games was, and we talked about this one previously, was War Games. You guys remember War Games on the PS1?
I remember the movie with Matthew Broderick.
Oh, come on.
Based on the movie, though. Yeah.
Based on the movie.
Yeah.
But it's a classic, great multiplayer game, and it's just essentially blowing everything up with like tanks, cars, planes, and all that sort of stuff.
I think I played
great fun. We must have rented it. I don't even know. It's got to be double figures.
We could have bought it at least twice over.
Yeah,
I'm sure it was that many times.
Not quite 65 million, but yeah. And the other one, what was the other one that you brought up the other night that I completely forgot about? Was Vigilante 8. Do you remember Vigilante 8? Yeah. The sort of like
not really a fan of Vigilante 1 or 2 or 3, but they finally found their
only 8.
They got the balance right for number 8.
Yeah, it took them 8 goes to get it right. But those there was a couple of others as well. But I remember, there were several games that we rented that I think we could have bought.
Vigilante 8 was like Twisted Metal, wasn't it? It's like a Twisted Metal kind of game, similar. But I remember playing it around yours, multiplayer, split screen, just shooting the hell out of each other. Good game.
Yeah, it was just absolutely classic, and loads and loads of rentals on that. But yeah, in terms of like going in and out of all the rental places, and I know we spoke about Blockbuster a lot. What did you used to do, Steve?
I used to work for Blockbuster.
Yeah, you did that one in Purley. Yes, you did.
And one night I detained some guy for stealing VHS.
Yeah. Speed 2. How dare you rent Speed 2?
The worst I've ever made. No, Speed 2.
Speed 2. Speed 1, I'd have complimented them. No, I was there between 2004 to 2005. It's about 18 months or thereabouts at the store in Purley.
Oh God, are you going to tell us some stories, man?
What
was it like? What was it like? What is that smell? How do you get that Blockbuster smell?
It's a trade secret, a company secret. I can't divulge it even now.
I want that bloody smell. I want it. There's nothing smells like a Blockbuster, and they all smell the same. So what is that? What is it?
I think, well, now I'd say it's the smell of nostalgia.
Yeah. Do you know what, though? Do you know what? You are right, though. Yeah. You are right.
That's right. There is that smell. Like, what is it?
No, but like,
it's a bit like new car smell and VHS smell, kind of all mixed together.
Like a kind of a plastic box box, magic tree,
new car magic tree smell.
Yeah. That's what it is. Oh. Yeah, we'll patent that. We'll get that on a like a smelly candle,
and just do Blockbuster smell.
Blockbuster, yes.
People would love
essence of Blockbuster.
Essence
of Blockbuster. You just smell like Blockbuster all day. You know, gets the ladies and/or men hot. So go for it.
Oh man, did you enjoy it?
I did. It was the right job at the right time for me because I was obviously at college studying, needed money to pay for it, and it was a job where I got to talk about videos, films, games all day long. Yeah, it was brilliant. I say it had its downfall, which was mainly customers, like any job involving dealing with the public. But being in a shop where you got to talk about films and games all day long, it worked for me at the time.
And what was the deal? What was the big deal that you had to push?
Oh, bundles.
That you were telling me about.
Got to get your bundles.
Come on, you guys must remember these. What was it?
Bundles.
So I don't remember. At the counter and be told, want to get your bundle, 2 films, popcorn, a drink, £10.
Oh God, yeah, no,
memory unlocked.
It is. All these
two film. What was it? 2 film rentals,
popcorn, bottle of drink.
Yeah. That was right because you had the popcorn in like the drop baskets, didn't you?
That's right.
In the middle, and you just got your bag, and then you at the till were like, "Oh, do you want to get a drink as well?" And
that was the only sales goal we ever got was to sell bundles.
Did you get commission or bonuses for it?
No, there was targets to hit on a given day or evening, and that was all. The entire time I was there, you just had to hit your target. That was it.
Or you got fired.
Did you ever miss your target? Were you told off?
No, I say I was actually pretty fortunate. At the time I was there, it was a really, really good bunch of people. I'm actually still in touch with a lot of them now, which is 20 years on. I don't like saying that number out loud, but
20 years
on. Yeah, 20 years.
At least your maths is right. Mine ain't.
Yeah, it was a really good bunch of people. And so on the evenings, we would all work together. If there were some of us on the tills and other people weren't, you'd let someone else have your bundle, so everyone else finished the night with the right amount on their totals. I was just giving away the secret there. Giving it away. 20 years on.
You see,
your manager is livid. Your manager's like, no, Steve.
We're such a wholesome podcast, but I could just see the manager at the time, like listening to this, going, "You did me.
You screwed me over.
Hand in your card." He'll say,
"I could have fired you."
And what was the? We were talking about this the other night, and the one thing that it didn't shock me because I know that's the kind of thing you'd remember. But the one thing I found was quite interesting. What can you still remember?
Oh, my account number.
His account number.
Still remember my card number from Blockbuster.
20 years
that's
on.
Weird.
Which is tell the audience.
2601020007. So don't make any films out of my account.
It sounds like
my number.
Like a budget James Bond a little bit, but
00007. Yeah.
Well, it's funny enough when James and I were talking about it, it was the 007 that came into my head first of all, and I just worked the number backwards.
Oh, we were talking. Yeah.
Yeah, another random memory unlocked.
Like I say, knowing you, I'm not shocked.
Steve, I've got a question for you. When you were working there, what was the ratio between videos and video games? So what percentage averagely would people rent games compared to videos?
I mean, films definitely more. I'd say probably 70 to 80% of the rentals would be films. And it's funny, when James and I were talking about it, my memories of rentals or rental stores, I don't ever remember renting any cartridge games. I only ever rented disc games, predominantly PS1, and then obviously later on a little bit of PS2. But it's my main memory of game rental is just PS1.
Yeah, I think. Go on, Age.
No, did you get a good staff discount as well? Would you get first dibs?
Well, when I started there, it used to be 10 free rentals per week. And there was a restriction on new releases. So
10 a week?
10 a week, yeah. And there was when new releases came out. So when I was there 2004, the big game I remember was San Andreas. San Andreas was out. I'd say I've been there a few months when that came out. And obviously it was quite hot at the time, that all the staff wanted to rent it out, and we were told, categorically, we've got, I think it was 4 or 5 rental copies. They're off limits to staff for the first, I think it was the first couple of weeks. You couldn't, you had to, if you wanted it, you had to buy it. And obviously, as a member of staff, you could put one aside to buy it, but to rent, it was off limits. And again, it was the same with new films as well. Certainly on the first weekend they were out, new films were off limits to staff. But from that point onwards, that was one of your freebies per week.
Wow, because films were obviously further away from release on video/DVD from the cinema than they are now. I think it was. I could be talking rubbish. It was probably about 6 months, wasn't it? 5-6 months.
Yeah, it come down to 6 months. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I remember Extravision back in this must have been early 90s. When you used to get the magazine, they used to have a magazine in store that was like monthly or maybe I think it was weekly, but monthly. And the release dates in that for films, and a film would be in the cinema, and it'd be maybe 2-3 years.
It was a long time, wasn't it? Actually, thinking about it. Yeah. So when the film finally came out, there was like a massive hype for it, I suppose, which is why 10 free rentals a week. You wouldn't think they'd give that many away. Was people actually taking 10 a week?
I can't say for sure. I think some people might have been giving them to their friends, maybe.
Yep.
Family or otherwise.
You're talking rubbish. Nobody would ever be so flagrant. It's almost
do more than one a night. No, it's just.
I mean, it's almost as if someone wanted to nick a copy of Speed 2, for goodness' sake.
Next question, Steve. What was the most rented film and video game, if you can remember, that you always remember people picking up? What was the most popular ones?
Certainly, well, I say in the time I was there, San Andreas. San Andreas is the standout game memory for me. I remember actually it was the only time I worked there. I say it must have been 18 months, 2 years max. The only time we ever had a queue outside the store at 10 o'clock in the morning to rent and to buy. That was the morning San Andreas came out.
Wow,
nice.
Bloody hell. I mean, well, to be fair, it's interesting we've posed that question, Age, because I've got a few big titles over the years that have made ripples on the rental market. So maybe we'll drop those in a bit later on. But I feel like we're well and truly a good halfway down memory lane now. But I'm going to rewind us a little bit. See what I did there? I'm being kind. Yeah. So it's safe to say that we were all, I think, big users of the good old rental shops back in the day, throughout probably late 80s, early 90s, and certainly into the sort of 2000s with all the new releases. Certainly San Andreas probably being one of the biggest around that time. But where and when did the rental business start in terms of renting videos/films? Where did it start? Chaps, throw it out here. I can't ask Steve because he can see my screen, so it's not very fair. But give me a country. Give me a country where you believe that video rentals began.
The obvious one. Okay, I'm not going to. Is the States, right? But obviously it can't be because you wanted me to say that. So you're going to be like, oh, dude, you're stupid.
Of course, it's not that simple. Age, what do you reckon? Give me a country.
I'm going to say Venezuela, just because.
I'm going to go back and say Russia.
Okay.
Japan's my final answer.
So I'll say Dylan's the closest, but he's not anywhere near, really. So it's actually Germany.
Oh, fair play.
It was a place called Kassel in Germany. And
which
a guy
Germany?
At
the time. Which Germany at the time?
Good question. Well, that is a good question. I haven't got that, so I'll find that out. Pop a pin on that. I'll get that found out for you. But there was a chap called Eckhard Baum, and he used to lend his film collection that he had on Super 8 film to family and friends. And after a short time of doing it, he started charging them. It's like, I hate you guys. And they started charging you. Rocking up. His grandmother rocking up to the thing, right? That'll be two Deutschmarks, please. 2 Deutschmarks. But this was actually in 1975. Oh, right. 1975 that he began this. And he found that more and more people became interested in it through word of mouth. And he essentially launched a rental business based off of initially lending to his friends and family. And then people sort of said, well, I want to see that film. I want to see that film. And he started, a small charge for it. He then grew his collection over the years to include videotapes, DVDs, etc. And believe it or not, the business is still run today as of 2023.
Amazing.
Wow.
So the chap's name is Eckhard Baum, if you want to search for him. I don't know what the business name is. I think it's something in German. I think it's an abbreviation of his first name, but he's still running the business now. So I think that's pretty impressive, and hats off to him. But to come back to what you said, Dill, in the US, because that was a damn good guess. They were very shortly afterwards. Yeah. Where did the first rental store open in the US? It was actually in LA. Hazard a guess at the year? I said shortly after the other one.
76.
Ooh, 77. 1977 in LA. And that was essentially just a video VHS rental store chain of eventually. But games wise, which is obviously mainly what we're here for, when did they first appear in rental stores? Now, this I was surprised at this. I've got to be honest with you, because I thought it was a bit later. But what do you reckon? Give me a year.
Well, I actually think that you could rent out cassettes. I think there were places that rent out cassettes, which is stupid. Which is stupid because you could copy them quite easily. But I do think that happened. So I think that probably happened in the very mid to early to mid 80s. So I'm going to say 84.
Dill?
Yeah, I'll go 82, 81.
Yeah, Dill's got it. It was actually as early as 1982, and they had titles Donkey Kong, they had Frogger, and they had E.T. as well. But
yeah, because you had all the Atari card stuff as well, so you could
makes sense.
Easy to rent those.
But it was it wasn't going to last, to be fair, at that time, because in 1984, Japan passed quite a sweeping law actually banning games rental. Because of so many outlets, they making unauthorized copies of the games, as we've kind of just alluded to. But to get an idea, shortly after that, obviously, they eventually had to give in because the industry was growing so much, and it was growing so hugely that by 1986, in the US, they had upwards of 19,000 rental stores. Across the US. Now that's a big old number, and it was exploding. It was only getting bigger and bigger. But by 86, I mean that's still fairly early on, and you're looking at nearly 20,000 stores, which is just nuts, really. And as I put down, the rest is pretty much history. We know the likes of Blockbuster. We know the likes of all of the independent sort of stores that we used to go to were just, exploding with the rental market at the time. However, what I was going to do was ask you guys what you think in terms of films, first of all, and then some of the titles in games. What do we think the two biggest rental titles of all time might be?
I know number one.
Okay, and this is going up to 1998. And the reason it goes to 1998 is because that was kind of the swan song of the video era.
I still know the answer then.
So go on, Age, what you got?
Titanic. Must be number one. Must be. Am I right?
But this is the thing, because I actually did quite a bit of digging on this, and as we found out with things like game sales numbers and industry numbers and stuff like that, things can vary massively depending on who's reporting it, etc., etc. But when I looked at some of the other websites, Titanic was definitely in there because obviously at the time it was such a massive, massive film and it grossed a huge amount in the cinema. But as far as rentals go standalone, apparently Star Wars did $270 million.
What?
I mean, what? 270 million in rentals. That's just madness.
But VHSs were expensive back then. A new VHS when it first came out, I think could be up to £20 maybe for like brand new.
Yeah.
A lot of money. Absolutely. So it makes sense to rent it because films you don't watch as much as video. You might watch it a few times, but I don't know.
I mean, it was obviously at that time an absolutely massive market, and as we already said, late 80s, it was just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And I think Steve gave me a stat earlier. What was it about Blockbuster in terms of their stores?
At their peak, they were opening a new store every 17 hours.
Jeez.
That was how quick.
17 hours? Yeah, that's not even a day.
Unbelievable explosion. Like we said, when its peak hit. That's
bonkers. 17 hours and you're opening a new store. I mean, that's That's nuts. I mean, a little bit more about Blockbuster in a bit, but seriously, I mean, yeah, the other film I was going to push out there as well, even though it was quite a bit earlier than 1998, was E.T., believe it or not, which grossed 228 million at the time in rental sales. And apparently these numbers adjusted for inflation. You're looking at 457 mil for Star Wars and 385 mil for E.T.
Right.
I mean, that is some serious De Niro, isn't it? I mean, seriously. Some other big titles as well. I don't know whether you've got any of these down, but Sister Act was a big one. Rental. Yeah. Under Siege. Few Good Men, The Bodyguard, Jurassic Park, OBS, Pulp Fiction. And they were all, I mean, there's loads of them. There's obviously loads to go through, but those were some of the heaviest rental hitters. Where people, I've no doubt, would be chomping at the bit to get hold of. What was it? Did it Blockbuster? You had a case, didn't you? And then you had the artwork at the front.
Actual display case was the actual box, and then a white Blockbuster box behind it.
That's it.
Take the white Blockbuster box to the counter. If there's no white Blockbuster box, there is no filming. But people would still ask anyway. Have you got one back? Have you got one hidden behind the counter? Or
have you kept one aside just for me because I'm the special customer?
Did you? Everyone, every time they said,
were customers very polite and forgiving once you told them that?
Where's my Super Monaco Grand Prix?
I've got to be honest, there was a massive mix of customers. Generally, most of them were all right, but there were one or two scenes of great drama in the store over very, very minor incidents.
Over a rental?
Over rental. I remember actually had a lady come in. I hadn't been there that long at the time, absolutely screaming the place down. It was about 5 minutes into the conversation before I got to tell me what was wrong. And it turned out that the Finding Nemo disc she'd been given was scratched and her child was traumatized.
Oh, no.
Yeah,
it's all your fault, Steve.
And I was sort of waiting for is there any more to the story? No, it's just a scratched DVD. Okay.
Did you
like, what else?
Steve, did you ever have to dish out late fines, and how did that go? What was the procedure?
Well, obviously everyone had your card with your card number, and then it would pop up when you obviously scanned the card. Your account will come up, and any late fees as well will become up as a warning. So many late fees were charged, and it was actually quite a nice little perk as well. It was a very, very basic computer system, but you could add notes to accounts. Oh. So when the account opened up, it would then flag up.
You can't do that now.
No, it would then flag up any text or warnings you had about that particular customer. So, this person will be late, or any other notes you wanted to put to other members of staff to let them know about the person.
See, inside knowledge. You see, we're getting all the inside track.
I think, is it true, Steve, that Blockbuster made a lot of their profit from late fees? Is that?
Yes, it was a huge amount. I mentioned it to James earlier on before we were on air that shortly after we talked about doing this podcast, I had a little look online. There's actually a documentary about the last Blockbuster, and it charts the history of Blockbuster as a company. And one of the bits they talk about is when they abolished the late fees, the company's profit nosedived. There was a huge amount of money being made just on late fees.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the things I never quite understood the economics of when I was there. I was told that the unit cost for a DVD, because obviously when you watch a DVD, or it always says that text at the start, do not copy this, and you can't distribute it. And I believe they had to pay a lot more in order to have a copy that could be used for that purpose, which I think I was told at the time was 35 or 40 quid a unit. It worked out at. And at the time at Blockbuster, you thought about that film has to go out 8 or 9 times for them to break even on it. Most of the discs wouldn't make it 8 or 9 times out. They'd be damaged and end up going in the bin. So I never understood at the time how that disc model was making money, if the money was coming from the bundles, from the food and drink and everything else at the time, or from the late fees.
It's mad, isn't it? I mean, I do, and I do know that there's a lot of stuff that's said when you look into this, aside from Blockbuster, at some of the smaller places, the ones that used to do other stuff. They used to stock other items, or your mirror and your
mirrors and frames,
mirror and your I can't even talk frame place. But the fact was that there was a lot of places that used to do rentals, things like supermarkets and stuff like that. They used to do them as loss leaders, so they would literally put them on the shelves as to get the customer to come in and make a rental, but obviously make money on all the groceries, of course. Yeah. So, I mean, you can only imagine, can't you, really, the amount of the hundreds of thousands of places that had a rental kind of section in their store across just the US. I mean,
you've got to get people in the door, ain't you?
Yeah,
you got to get people in.
You sort of think it's massive, but then you add a whole nother ton of layers on top because of all these companies were thinking, well, hang on, they're not coming in the store necessarily for whatever. Let's get them in anyway and show that we're doing some rentals or whatever. So it's just mind-boggling how massive the market was. But I've done a few, obviously, the big hitters in the films, but what were some of the big hitters in terms of the games? Now, there's going to be, this list is quite long, but I've taken a few of some of the classic and probably not quite so classic titles, actually, to be fair. And it's interesting that we were saying about some of you guys don't necessarily remember cartridge rentals. Funnily enough, some N64 titles are among the biggest in terms of rentals. So some of the big ones, Super Smash Brothers on the N64.
Yeah. They were expensive, man. N64 games were dear, so
they were. And we've had a couple of the guys on the Twitter posts that we did specifically mention the cost of N64 games, saying that they went out to rent them rather than buying them. Resident Evil 2 and 3 on the N64 and the PS1 respectively. WWF Attitude on the N64. Meh. I remember playing that. Didn't really blow me away, but a lot of people rented it. Pokemon Snap.
Yeah.
Yeah?
It's not a bad game. They've just released it on the Nintendo Online on the Switch, the classic, and there's a new version as well. Yeah, it's all right. If you like Pokemon and taking photos,
if you like Pokemon, you like anything with the name Pokemon.
Yeah.
Go on, Dale.
Nothing, man. I'm just listening to Adrian's tales of Pokemon Snap. I'm just like, no, I never played it. I've heard about it, never played it.
I've got it on the Switch. Yeah, it's all right.
Have you got it? Have you actually got it?
And like I said, they re-released the N64 version on the Switch as well. It's on the.
So it's on the N64 online-y thing. Oh yeah, I might give it a go actually.
Yeah, it's quite a cute, fun little game.
Nice. One you definitely would have heard of, Gran Turismo on the PS1.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely massive classic, and Metal Gear Solid on the PS1 as well. So, yeah.
Oh yeah.
The games you mentioned. Actually, no, not all of them do fit in the category. I was thinking if you rent a game, you don't want a really long story-driven game where you get halfway through and you can't complete it.
They just rent it again the next weekend.
I suppose, but with save points and all that. But I suppose the PS1 you could do that. But I'm talking. It kind of makes sense. You might rent out sports games. Smash Brothers, a quick fighting game, but Metal Gear Solid, you can't complete in a weekend, can you?
You can.
You can? Okay,
well, I couldn't. Not that long. Metal Gear 1? Metal Gear Solid 1 on the PS1? Yeah, that's not a long game, is it?
Apparently it was a big hitter in the rentals market. Yeah.
You think it is? Like, you smashed the first disc. Got another second disc coming. Oh, hang on, let's finish now.
Oh, all right.
I think when you know what you're doing, that's about 90 minutes beginning to end. I think it could be done.
No, there you go. I'm just
maybe 2
I'm
hours.
just not good at the game. What can I say?
So, I mean, well, you're absolutely right though in terms of things like the WWF Attitude stuff, because there was several wrestling titles in there. To be fair, big sort of multiplayer titles. Smash Brothers, obviously, massive multiplayer title. I mean, Gran Turismo is a bit of a weird one to have in there, but I suppose just because it was such a big title, I suppose that the kind of height of its popularity just carried it through. Probably on the renting and the buying market. So, but yeah, I would say that's probably a damn good assessment. To be fair, is the fact that sports games, quick pick up and play, and certainly multiplayer stuff as well. So
I wonder how many people rented a game and they said, "I'm going to buy it," and Steve, I want to rent this next week. I love it so much, I'm going to buy a copy. What's the ratio? I don't know.
I say the time I was there, I remember that less from customers or from people coming in, from the same faces coming in with games. I think, as we talked about earlier on, and as you've mentioned there with the PS1 games, at that point, certainly to me as a gamer, and obviously the age I was, games still seemed, they were so expensive still, that a new game that I really wanted, like Metal Gear Solid or Gran Turismo, and obviously the amount of money you were putting in, it was better to maybe give it a try renting it, rather than risk spending all that money buying a game that could be awful.
I think it's worth probably considering the fact as well that if even the knee-jerk reaction was you definitely rent it from Blockbuster, was the knee-jerk reaction to buy it from Blockbuster necessarily? Like would if you sat down 100 people in that era and said, right, where are you going to buy your next video game?
I don't think I ever bought a game from.
There you go. So they may have,
Samurai Shodown for £2.
Protect that investment.
Jokes on them, innit? Yeah, jokes on them. You got the bargain. What else did you get? You said you got like some other ones.
I didn't even know half the names. There's like 4 or 5 random people. I want to say R-Type, the R-Type version, which is pretty good.
Well, I like that already.
Yeah, and I love R-Type anyway. But there was.
Go on.
Yeah, no, I can't remember, and I just don't understand why PS1 games are gone. I can't. They just disappeared. It's very, very sad. I
want to tell a sad story. Sad story about a rental from Blockbuster. Yeah. So one Saturday I went in, right? And this is when, so I've been doing this for about a year, I guess. And I guess the Master System thing was really on the decline. And there weren't many games there that I hadn't tried. So I think like Super Monaco is there and, like California games and stuff. I'm like, oh, I've rented those. I'm like, what is the one that is there that I haven't rented yet? And it was Pit Fighter.
Oh,
it was Pit Fighter on the Master System. And this is so funny, right? So I was like, I read it. I was like, oh, it can't be that bad. Because I remember like reading like a bad review of it in Sega Power the month before. I'm like, oh, it can't be that bad. I took it home and it's my cousins were coming around that day as well. I was like, oh yeah, get my cousins, man. This would be fun. Oh my God. Pit Fighter with the Master System was one of the worst games you will ever play in your life. Yeah. And do you know what happened? I had a bottle of Coke on the floor because obviously we're in a small place, didn't have anywhere to put my bottle of Coke. My little cousin kicked over the bottle of Coke. No. Coke went in my Master System with Pit Fighter in it. Boom. Game over. I was like,
was it destroyed for good?
I'm like, we're gonna have to play Cluedo or something. And then turned it all off. I pulled out Pit Fighter and it stripped loads. Like the bit of the cartridge that goes into goes into the machine, and there's those like they kind of wear off after time. It kind of ripped loads of those out, and those are still in my Master System, like the contacty kind of covering-y bits. And I was like, oh no, what have I done to this cartridge? I'm like, oh, please work. So like the next day, like I just like let everything dry out. I was like, oh, let everything dry out. But my Master System is like a rock. It was just like, and then Pit Fighter was like, Pit Fighter unfortunately did work. So,
it did unfortunately.
I played a bit more of it. Yeah. I played a bit more of it. It might have been. I don't know. Maybe because the contacts were still in, like the contact covering, like metal.
Still in the contact.
Still in the
cartridge slot. Yeah, I just wonder if that's why it still works. But I'm just like,
Dylan,
my dad never got in trouble for it. Obviously, we returned it. We never heard from him about it.
They never bothered testing it. It's such a bad game. If you put in like Sonic, if you put Sonic straight afterwards, you might have had a weird combined game of Pit Fighter and Sonic combined. Can you imagine Sonic and Pit Fighter?
Yeah. It'd be like Sonic Pit Fighter, but a bit less shit.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
What was that? Okay. Oh man. Well,
it was so bad.
Apparently, Adrian, good sir, a little birdie tells me that you've got some or a list of, I think it's titles that were exclusive to good old Blockbuster. Is that right?
Well, yeah, I do. And actually, some of these titles you could like rental exclusives, and some were like you could literally buy it from these places from Blockbuster. So, first off, respect to Blockbuster trying to build that excitement, making it so you had to travel to a Blockbuster to get these particular titles. I'd be interested if Steve saw any of these pass his hands, but maybe not. They're a lot of them are N64 games, believe it or not. I don't know what they had a good deal going. I've got a few here. So these are obviously really rare now. A lot of these titles are worth a lot of money. The first one on the SNES is Clay Fighter Tournament Edition.
Clay Fighter.
I know, ridiculous game. Might talk about Clay Fighter a bit more. This is interesting though. There was actually a Donkey Kong Country competition cartridge on the SNES. It was part of the Blockbuster World Video Game Championships. And actually, if you get a copy of this, it's worth a pretty penny. What else? Eek the Cat. Anyone heard of Eek the Cat before?
Eek the Cat?
What? Yeah, I believe it was a
verbal.
I think it was a Nickelodeon show, it's a cartoon. But when you read about this SNES exclusive was literally an updated version of Sleepwalker on the Amiga, which we've interviewed the man that made Sleepwalker. I don't know if it says it was made by the same team. I think they just put extra stuff on it and made a SNES title. Nice. Final Fight Guy on the SNES, limited exclusive. Nice. Never played it. I don't know if you guys ever heard of this. Mr. Nuts on the SNES, apparently. Mr. Nuts. Yeah, 2D platform.
Is that a squirrel game?
It is. You're a squirrel. You pay a squirrel.
Yes.
The Ren and Stimpy show, Fire Dogs. I think there's a few Ren and Stimpy games, wasn't there? But this was a SNES, apparently a Blockbuster exclusive for the SNES. Like I said earlier, Blockbuster World Championships 2 on the Mega Drive. Mm-hmm. It had a weird combination, of NBA Jam and Judge Dredd combined. Worth a lot of money.
Yeah, I bet.
Madden 93 Championship Edition. Not sure what the difference is there, but that was a exclusive. This is actually the next game I'm going to talk about is the most expensive and rare game on the N64. It is Clay Fighter 63 1/3 Sculptor's Cut. It's exclusively only in Blockbuster. I'm going to do a little shout out to my little video I did earlier. I did the top 10 rarest N64 games, and spoiler alert, this was number 1. It goes for over £1,000 these days for a copy.
Wow.
It's not a good game. It wasn't really, it's only available in Blockbuster. It wasn't stocked up well. But it is one of the most expensive and rare games you can get. Stunt Racer 64, N64. Transformers, Beast Wars, Transmetals. And that's what it's called, apparently. Yep. Transmetals.
Yeah.
Hey, look, ahead of the time, ahead of the time.
Don't forget that, Harry. What was it again?
But that was a limited exclusive again, N64. NFL Blitz Special Edition, N64. Razor Freestyle Scooter, again, N64. A real exclusive there again. And International Track and Field 2000, again, on the N64.
Wow.
Indiana Jones and the Infernal Machine on the N64. Now, I believe this game, actually, if you bought this game, you could actually unlock for free the Fate of Atlantis. So a lot of people would buy this game purely for Fate of Atlantis. Nice. I'm not sure if that was on the N64 version particularly, but you could. I think it was on the Wii.
Oh, was it the Wii version? Yeah, the Wii version.
I think it was the Wii version. Daikatana N64 limited exclusive. Don't know much about it. Apparently, apparently it was a massive flop on the PC, and they re-released it on the N64. Didn't do very well. Eggs of Steel on the PlayStation 1. Eggs of Steel, a dodgy platformer. Eggs of
Steel.
I know, right? Freestyle Street Soccer, Xbox and GameCube exclusive. And I think there's one more game on my list, just loading up here. Outlaw Golf, 9 Holes of Xmas. And there's another one, Outlaw Golf 9 more Holes of Xmas. So basically, it's like a weird Christmas Blockbuster exclusive golf game. Bizarre. Yeah, unbelievable. But there you go. So firstly, respect to Blockbuster. They tried to be a bit clever, a bit different, but I don't think any of those games particularly were that good. But very rare.
So when we say exclusive, like they would literally produce them to be stocked only in Blockbuster.
Yeah, either to rent or to sell, or a bit of both. So some you could only rent from Blockbuster, nowhere else, or some you could literally only buy or rent from Blockbuster, which is weird.
I mean, well, if anything, that shows Blockbuster's pulling power at the time, really, doesn't it? And their buying power, because that's nuts to actually commit to producing. Okay, fair enough. They're probably not in the forefront of most people's memories in terms of the titles, but to actually commit to producing games to only be rented and sold at Blockbuster, that's mad, isn't it? That just shows you how big they were.
Was there ever any videos or DVDs that were Blockbuster exclusive? I doubt it, but I don't know.
I think they probably. Actually, yes, there was one, and I remember reading about this. I'm sure the film. What's that one? Jeremy Irons, Lolita.
Oh, okay.
That was. I think they. There was a big hoo-ha about it, and I think I read something about this where they did a promotion for it. It was in the cinema, and they said, "Oh, we've got this title. It's exclusive to us. You can't get it anywhere else." I'm sure it is. And then what happened eventually? I think so many other outlets got so fed up with it, they ended up approaching like wholesalers of VHS tapes and stuff like that, and basically ended up like circumnavigating the system to stock it anyway.
Right.
And Blockbuster got the right hump with it and all this sort of thing. But I think what they did was they used it as kind of an exercise to, in terms of working out that films were a lot more difficult to make exclusive than probably games, because let's be honest, cinema's always been quite big, certainly massive during that period of time. You can't really, can you make a new release exclusive? It's a bit cheeky, isn't it?
I suppose Netflix do it now, don't they? They do it.
I suppose, yeah. Yeah, I suppose that's a fair point.
Are you going to mention Netflix later?
I might do.
Yep.
I might do.
Yeah.
And again, you're really good at these little segues, aren't you? You're really good at these little segues, you two. But I know we've talked about all sorts of, kind of rental establishments, and obviously Blockbuster being one of the biggest, but definitely a shout out to some of the, the independent ones, the old frame shops, and the little news agents and stuff like that. Because, if it wasn't for them, then, a lot of people wouldn't have had their kind of first memories of renting maybe a first game or film. So, big up to the little news agents and, shops that were doing rentals as a side hustle. But, I have got a few sort of bits of trivia and facts about the massive juggernaut that was Blockbuster. I say was Blockbuster. I think is the last one still going?
The last one still exists.
It's still going. It's still going.
One left.
But does anybody know? Well, this is a very strange bit of trivia, to be fair, and I didn't know this, and it's very odd. But the first Blockbuster was actually opened almost exclusively due to the collapse of the oil market, believe it or not. There's a husband and wife team that were invested quite heavily in the oil market, and they were essentially reeling in sort of 1984, 85 because the market just crashed essentially. And they all of a sudden decided that they'd seen all of this hoo-ha about rental stores and the fact that it was exploding and video renting and whatever. And they thought, I know what we'll do. Let's switch from oil. Let's go into video rentals. And that's exactly what they did. And they opened what they called a rental mega store. So you had all of these smaller establishments and obviously the ones doing the side hustles, but they wanted a mega store. So essentially all under one roof and all the titles and everything. And they opened it in October 85 in Dallas. Of all places. But there you go. So yeah, if anyone asks you, how did Blockbuster come about? Well, because oil went down the pan, essentially. Now, here's an interesting one. We talked loads about N64, and exclusive titles. They were actually sued by Nintendo at one point.
Oh, okay.
Nintendo said that, they claimed that Blockbuster were infringing their copyright by photocopying the game manuals on popular titles such as Mario and Zelda. Blockbuster stated they did it as the originals were so worn out, and eventually they had a bit of a powwow and they settled out of court. So nobody really knows what kind of happened behind closed doors. But it's just interesting to me because if you read into that story years later, or a few years later, Nintendo had to sort of backtrack a little bit because they realised that they were going to be losing, a fair bit of coverage and revenue. With all of the stuff that Blockbuster was stocking. But yeah, they went in for the jugular and basically said that, you can't photocopy game manuals. I mean, of all the things, game manuals, but there we go. Yeah. We mentioned late fees earlier. I've got a number for you.
Yeah, go on.
This is in the year 2000, all right, in isolation. So the year 2000 on its own, okay, Blockbuster made a total of $800 million in late fees.
Jeez.
800 million in 2000 in the US alone. Yeah. Now this was 16% of their entire revenue. So just the late fees on its own accounted for almost a fifth of their business.
It's mad,
800 million.
People forget, it's easy. Like if you haven't got your kid going, we got to get on the bus. Dad, we got to get on the bus.
Yeah.
We get late.
10:59 p.m. Yeah. But it's true. It's true. There you go. Late fees. This is a bit of a wacky one. They actually at one point banned male employees from having long hair.
Wouldn't have been a problem.
No, wouldn't have been a problem for any of us, really, to be fair.
Steve, did you have long hair at Blockbuster?
Yes, I had hair then, not long hair.
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah, I did, but there was a time. There was a time.
And now he doesn't pay for barbers; he just goes like that. But yeah, again, if you look into this one, it's quite interesting. There was a long and drawn out sort of to and fro in between some employees and whatnot. And I think Blockbuster eventually sort of, backed down after a while. But yeah, there was a long struggle to get that one removed, saying that male employees couldn't have long hair. But there we go. Netflix. We talked about Netflix earlier. Blockbuster actually turned down a deal with Netflix.
They could have bought them, couldn't they? Is that right?
Well, Netflix in 2000 wanted to join forces, and this was all around sort of like the DVD mail order rental market. And,
because they were both doing that, weren't they? Because Netflix and them and Total
Film, a Love Film, I think.
Love Film. Wasn't Love Film originally turned into Netflix? Maybe I don't know.
I think they were separate. I think they might have been separate. Anyway, we can look into that one. Put a pin in that. Essentially Netflix wanted to sort of handle all of the developments on the online side of the business. Yeah, because obviously Blockbuster were very much a physical media kind of entity, and obviously a lot of it in 2000 there was a real real sort of pivot there where a lot of it was moving online, as we know. And they wanted to handle that side of the business. Now, at the time when they went into this meeting, the Blockbuster CEO at the time said that wouldn't add any value. Essentially, he couldn't see them adding. I think the particular words were they couldn't add any more value to the company as it stood. Yeah, they were in a position where they were kind of at their peak value, and he didn't see any way sort of to add anything to it. And to add insult to injury, the chap from Netflix was essentially laughed out of the room.
Oh God!
So, yeah, and I think probably I haven't seen the documentary, but I'm probably gonna have a watch of it because
I was going to mention that. Yeah, the last Blockbuster when that entire scenario is replayed in the documentary.
Oh, brilliant!
Yeah, and the awkwardness now, obviously looking back at that Netflix were laughed out of the room.
Oh God!
Oh dear, that's not really. You can just imagine, can't you? Knowing what you know now,
yeah,
it's just must be so cringy. Do they go warts and all? Is it the whole meeting?
No, it's a dramatic reconstruction with puppets, if I remember rightly.
Oh.
But the actual personnel involved they're interviewed and obviously discuss what happened. But at the time, like you've already mentioned, there was such a juggernaut. Yeah. They just seemed unstoppable.
Well, I mean, that's essentially getting too big for your boots, really, isn't it? I mean, I don't. Yeah. There shouldn't be a time when any business, sits there and goes, "I'm not going to listen to what you have to say because there's no way you could possibly add any value to my business." How conceited have you got to be to essentially get to that kind of level? But there we go. That's what happened, and that's how the meeting went. And well, the rest is definitely history, isn't it?
I know. I would say, actually, rewinding back on one of your earlier points about when you said about buying new games. Would you buy new games from Blockbusters? And at the time, and I don't know what you guys would say, I wouldn't. When I was buying games, you were going elsewhere, and it was the same thing that with Blockbusters, HMV, a lot of the high street places. I wouldn't buy games there because they were so expensive.
Yeah,
you think if they actually had spoken to the people who knew at the time, the consumers buying films and games, I'm not buying stuff there because you're so pricey.
Yeah, I mean, now you say it, there's lots of kind of other shop names, and I'm sure we mentioned this on the Christmas pod deal about things like Virgin Megastore, your Woolworths, your HMVs, electronics boutiques, all those kind of stores that really pushed the whole buy the game from us agenda. And was that part of the problem? They went from the rental market was maybe, had its heyday, and they hadn't got anything in the chamber left to kind of push or promote, to purchase stock.
The market changed and they didn't, I think, really is.
There we go. You've heard it here. So, does anybody know, and the irony on this is unbelievable, does anybody know the name of the last film ever rented from a Blockbuster in 2013?
Oh, no. I bet something good, though.
Go on, it is good. Have a stab.
Isn't that James? Oh, is it?
Is it something gold?
I know what it is, actually. I know it's facts.
No, same year.
The End of the World. It's called End of the World or something. It's got James Franco or something in it. Yeah, something like End of the World or something.
I'll give you points. It's actually called. It's Seth Rogen's "This Is the End." Is the film apparently the last film that was ever rented in 2013, and apparently it was late and they had to take it back. Can you Adam and Eve it? But yeah, so I mean, what surprises me about all of that is I think that had Blockbuster maybe adapted slightly, Not much, just slightly. They didn't need to do much. I think that that there is a world in which they might still be around doing something. I don't know. Mm-hmm. I don't know what that would be, but I just that part about the Netflix just gets me every time to be so brazen to say no, sorry, not interested in anything you've got to say. We are the kings of the rental market, and then the rental market was like a big rug just getting pulled out from under their feet. But what do we think, chaps? I mean, have you got anything? Have you got any little insights there, Age? I know you like to tack on a few bits, don't you?
I remember there was a weird in-between bit between Blockbuster shops and Netflix online. There was these weird like ATM machines. If you remember them, and you could literally type in. It was like an ATM machine. You could type in your number, pay money, and a DVD would pop out. Then you have to return it back to the ATM machine. They were quite popular for about maybe a year or 2 years. My mum used to have one in Evesham when she moved out. We go, well, let's get some DVDs. We walked down to this weird it's a weird little thing. There's like humans involved. Yeah.
It was like a big box, just a box, wasn't it? And you just searched for whatever you wanted and it kind of chucked it out. I think, cool. I started working in Currys in Christmas in 2003, actually. And that's funny you say that about the transition, because now I remember that, because there was a lot of DVD players. DVD players were massive. DVD video players, they were huge. People buying them all the time. And obviously DVD was really coming into its own. And that was when the company, when I was with Currys, they did a lot of tie-ins with mail order DVD rentals and stuff like that. So that changed things already, because you had a situation where you had to, go to the store, get the physical copy, take it home, bring it back. Yeah. Or remind your dad that you got to get on the bus still. Yeah.
Go get on the bus.
Go. But so this was mail order. I don't know how I've no idea. Did any of you guys rent one? I don't know how long you got. Was it 3 days, 5 days, or
it was a bit quite longer, a long time? They were
quite a long time.
Good. Like you had a few free trials, and I don't remember. I never signed up for something on the long term. But yeah, towards the sort of late 2000s, I signed up to a lot of those Love Film free trials, and the Blockbuster tried it, and it was all right. It was all right. I think I might still have my Batman Arkham Asylum. I didn't want to give it back. I told him, I lost it you must have lost it in the post. Oh, no, I never got it.
Oh, never mind. Wow. So I thought, to be fair, it's only right that we've obviously talked loads about, our early rental memories, good old Blockbuster stuff, some of the titles, all the Adrian's given us a load of exclusive titles, etc. But it'd be nice to hear from some of our listeners / followers. Would it not? Would it not? It's only right.
I'd love to hear right from Blockbuster's mouth if they could talk, but I guess we'll never know.
Well, let me tell you. Well, I've got a few here actually, and I'll tell you what. As we know, the socials can be a real mixed bag of engagement. But there's so many people that have wanted to share a rental story or two. Across I've got Twitter and Instagram here actually, and I'm going to read a few out because some of them are just absolutely classic, and clearly people remember them as if it was yesterday. And the first one I've got is actually very similar to your story, Dill, to be honest with you. It's from Michael Taylor at Stomp224, and he said, I rented Story of Thor, what a game that was, on the Mega Drive for several weekends in a row, and some beep deleted my save on the last dungeon. I also only lived 30 seconds away from my Blockbuster. I made a game out of holding out returning my games as long as possible and then sprinting over at 22:59.
Yeah. At least you could sprint to it, though. I had to get a freaking bus, mate. I couldn't sprint down my Blockbuster.
You've given yourself a minute to do a 30-second sprint.
As you still got 30 seconds.
Yeah, I know. Cutting it close. Andy Gamer at UK Andy Gamer says Saturday rentals were always the best. Get as early as you can on a Saturday, and because of no trading on a Sunday, you paid for 1 day but got to keep it till Monday.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, and he said the wait list for Mortal Kombat 3 on the Mega Drive was crazy.
Oh, wow, yeah.
I'm not surprised, to be fair. We've got Dino at RIP_Dean. There was a little independent game shop, sold mainly Sega stuff, but you also could rent games there. Pretty much similar to Little News Agent I saw. anywho, I was in there looking for something to rent, and the owner and his brother had a massive fist fight in front of everyone. Sega Mega Drives getting launched at everyone.
Catch one.
Nice. Yeah. You could have a Mega Drive. You
would have a Mega Drive.
Clearly, the testosterone level's getting high in Blockbuster and rental shops, because you had your woman screaming at you for a scratched disc, and then we had launched Mega Drives.
The thing is, Steve, you didn't think about this. That poor girl doesn't know if Nemo was ever just found again, so it's kind of your fault.
You'll be glad to hear the lady got a credit and she got another DVD.
Yay!
So Nemo's story was concluded. It's okay.
Okay, fair enough.
Customer service for you there.
There you go.
I mean,
I think so.
I mean, it's you know, I mean, do you have you guys ever been? Have you had any issues like that with renting, staking stuff? But you ever got shouted at anyone or been shouted at?
No. The only annoying thing was when people didn't rewind the blooming tapes, mate. I'd spend like bloody minute like rewinding that tape. Like, come on, man. Jeez, just rewind it before you give it back.
What is it?
Be kind.
That's it. Be kind. Rewind. Be kind. Rewind.
Everyone's going to watch that movie now. They're like, we've said it like 10 times.
But it's interesting actually, because it's interesting you mentioned about Blockbuster themselves, Adrian. I believe you sent a tweet out and actually tagged Blockbuster in it, and they sent back a gift, did they not?
They did.
What did it say?
Well, let me get it up. So I just asked basically, what's your fondest memories, craziest stories regarding renting video games? Do you miss Blockbuster? And I tagged them in. They've got their own Twitter account. They have. Yeah. They move with the times. And we got a lot of replies, but one particular, let me find it. Mortal Kombat. The gentleman's called @TabMock99, and he said renting the Mortal Kombat 1995 film before it officially went on sale, and then just keeping it. And then Final Star Man, he said, "Woof." And those late fees might have been the difference between staying afloat or sinking. So, why you destroyed Blockbuster basically, and it's loading up very slowly. But Blockbuster came back, the real @Blockbuster account with almost over 200,000 followers. They just said, "World's best entry employee gift," just popping it in and out.
Like zooming in and out.
Respect. You know what? Their Twitter account is pretty funny. They take the mick out of themselves. The guy that runs it, or the people that run it, respect. I think they take it quite tongue in cheek.
That's so cool that they replied, though.
It was cool. Thank you, Blockbuster.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's and as I say, the fact they replied as well, and then a bunch of other people just got involved. And you know what? Unlike a lot of other things like questions that we asked and things like that, it wasn't just one-line answers or one-word answers or just there's people that have written full-on paragraphs and things like that. I mean, we can't go through all of them, but I'll pick out another few. But it's just really nice to see that actually this kind of thing really jogs a lot of memories and takes people on that kind of trip down memory lane. But we've got another one here from Ranger X @KevinKlein77. Friday night VHS movie and Sega Genesis rentals were a staple back in 1990 and 91. I must have played 90% of the Genesis library back then. I bet the rental shop loved him. There was a local shop that carried nearly everything for the 16-bit consoles, and every weekend was a thrill. Miss rental stores and game mags. Don't we all? Mm-hmm. Don't we all? There's another Ruth McCauley @RGE_McC, which I recall renting Game Gear games from a couple of local shops in Portadown. Such a treat when I got to do that. Also, Extravision. I remember when Virtua Racing came out and I was dying to play it, but it was so popular that a waiting list and you could only get it for one night. Virtua Racing? That popular?
I mean, that's an expensive game, so you wouldn't buy it. You'd rent that.
Oh, absolutely. Well, yeah, absolutely. I think that was probably true for several of those big titles at the time, wasn't it?
Yeah, they're talking about the Mega Drive version, and because didn't have the little chip. Well, that was really expensive when it came out. So no wonder there was a waiting list for
that. This is very interesting. We talk about closures and things like that. Alfredo the Cat @Jamie32107641, catchy name. Wife rented The Herbs on PS2 on a Friday. Blockbuster closed on the Monday. Never returned it.
Nice.
£30 game for £3 or whatever it was. The voices and Black Eyed Peas Sims versions in that game are burned into my soul. Not good. So, so he got The Herbs for about £3. and they closed on the Monday. So is that a good thing? Is that as good as your kind of £2 pickups age? Probably, don't know.
Wow. I've got a couple as well, James.
Go on then.
I've got at Jeremy Lovechild. I'm not sure what Jeremy it is. Jeremy, well, we might get in trouble for saying famous Jeremys, but this person said, I worked at Blockbuster. We had a spate of N64 games, usually GoldenEye Go Walkies. People would peel off the stickers on the cartridge and swap them to other games. There were a lot of copies of Wave Race and Pilot Wings floating about dressed up as Bond.
Cheeky.
Dean, we like Dean at Sandy Lana 77. Nice guy, always a big supporter of the show. But he said, not crazy, but a bloke near us, very early 90s, had a mobile games rental van, just driving around renting games to kids until Nintendo sued him for having a Mario sticker on the side of his van.
Keith said yesterday that someone in Selsdon did that.
Yeah. As
well, round Monks Hill Estate. That's a great idea.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Forget, Ice Cream Man, be the rental.
Be the video man.
Instead of late fees, you just go banging on people's doors like, give me my Street Fighter back.
Yeah.
Mobile video bailiff.
About it. Bloggo's pal, he said, during the heyday of renting games, I worked for Electronics Boutique, so I never needed to rent games, as we could just book out games and take them home to play, which is pretty mad when you think about it. Yeah.
Yes, Bloggos.
Book them out.
I guess just sort of borrow them, to bring them back next few days, whatever.
Cheeky.
One final one from Gaming Orchins. He said, can't think of anything crazy, but a local rental place used to have a boxed copy of NES Stack Up behind the counter. I asked the owner a couple of times, but he wouldn't sell it. I think that is a particularly rare game, isn't it? Stack Up.
Ooh.
Yeah, there you go. So some lovely memories there. And thank you, Blockbuster, again for getting involved. And sorry if Mortal Kombat Dude ruined your business. It's not Netflix after all.
Mortal Kombat 2 ruined for the stack of late fees, which, if you total them all up, come to approximately $800 million.
Yeah.
No, I don't know. But, I mean, all of that is just sort of testament to how kind of amazing that period of time was, to be fair. Well, I say period of time, it would be different for different people because, we've probably got people even older than us that remember renting probably early to mid 80s and onwards. So, I mean, any final words, chaps, on sort of, your little trip down memory lane?
Would you like to guess what 65 million means?
That's a good question. We haven't done your 65. I know we've had a couple of guesses.
About Titanic.
Just silly.
65 million, the amount of times Titanic was rented from Blockbuster.
Incorrect.
The total number of rentals in a single year.
Not correct. Sorry, James.
The total number of Blockbuster shops at its peak.
If you do the maths, if every 17 hours,
65 million.
Yeah. Steve, would you like a guess, my friend?
Number of members? Well, I'm thinking that number's too low for that.
Apparently, at Blockbuster's peak, there were 65 million members in total.
Worldwide?
Worldwide.
He's got it.
Is that it?
That's the population of the UK, my friend, when you think about it.
Yeah.
Thing is, though,
is that worldwide?
How long did you have, how long did a membership, last if you didn't use it?
I think it was 6 months.
Possibly
12.
So
the account would, yeah.
So it could have been like a rolling thing where.
So you only had 65 million at most at one point.
At one time,
at the peak, yeah. It wasn't like in total.
Okay, all right.
At one time, at the peak of their powers, that's the maximum they had.
To be fair, that's still quite a bit. And to be honest, that what you've got to kind of take from that as well is the fact that there would have been other establishments that do rentals as well. So if you added up kind of, everyone who was a member of some kind of rental, play establishment, the numbers are just mind-boggling. And 65 million alone as a snapshot for Blockbuster is massive. That's
pretty bad. Badass. Pretty badass, not bad.
I'm still trying to process the 17 hours thing. I mean, it's just not even a day.
Yeah.
It's not even one day. That's just mad. So have we done it justice? I like to think that every time we do sort of little nostalgia things like this, that everyone kind of has little questions and kind of, asks things and remembers things. Like whenever we mention stuff like some of the old shops, and one name's just come to mind, which used to be Ritz Video. Was it Ritz Video?
Ritz.
Ritz. Ritz Video. But things like that, when, like memories that you had, deal about speed and Darren and all that sort of stuff. But some of the really good ones as well, about some of the stuff that we rented, how long we had it for, running back to the bus stop at whatever time of night it was, going to the news agents and all that sort of thing. But I think that's what it's all about. And my shout out to everybody out there on the socials and stuff like that. Anyone that listens to it, do get in touch. Do give us any more stories that you got. Ask us any questions. And if there's anything we missed out, do give us a shout, because we can always go digging an answer for you. But I'd like to say, well done, Steve. Thanks for all your input today. It's fantastic. Good to hear. And
me and Steve used to work together quite well in art. Do you remember that, Steve? We used to be in the same art class.
That, yes.
We had a lot of fun, actually. We because you're good at art, by the way, Steve. I'm sure your art skills haven't diminished. I think they've got better, I would imagine. And I used to always sort of respect your art style. So I think we work well, and I miss those days.
Bravo.
Yeah.
Bravo.
Well, thank you for having me, chaps. It's been a pleasure to be here.
Pleasure. It's funny, actually, because we as a little footnote, we talk about, all the stuff we talk about in the pods, and the stuff we talk about kind of off air as well. And a lot of it kind of all aligns, and it's just so nice to see, like, especially when people comment all things like that and all the memories and stuff like that. And a lot of it falls into the same kind of conversation, doesn't it?
Yeah,
absolutely. And it's really nice, because it kind of just brings back all those memories, and it's I just love it. It's really nice to hear that people have such fond memories of those things, and we get to talk about it, and you get to talk about it, and you get to come on here and talk about it. It's it's really nice. So I hope you guys feel the same. I'm sure you do. Yeah. Good stuff.
Are you talking to us or the listeners, or a bit of both?
Both. Everyone.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But no, it's great. And on that cheery note, I'm going to bid everyone a farewell. And who knows where we'll be next time. But for now, for me and from the guys, good morning, good evening, good night, wherever you are. Take it easy.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to today's podcast. We really hope you enjoyed it. You can tweet us at Arcade Attack UK. We're also on Facebook at facebook.com/arcadeattackuk. Check out our website at arcadeattack.co.uk for lots more retro gaming goodness and to delve into our archives. Our podcasts are also available on Spotify, Stitcher, Podbean, YouTube and Apple Podcasts. Please leave us a review and a rating. We'd really appreciate it. If you'd like to support Arcade Attack, please check out our Patreon page at patreon.com/arcadeattack, which will give you access to exclusive podcasts, interviews and other bonus content. So, until next time, take care and we'll speak to you soon.